The world has stopped producing leadership. Tell me, name one leader in Europe who can truly be considered a leader. There isn't a single one. What they broadcast in the West, that the people hate their leader, hate their regime, that's nonsense. It's not true. The people love their leader, the national leader who protects the nation, the Russian language and Russian culture, and who empowers them.
Hello to you, viewers of Tov channel. It's good to have you with us, and joining us on the line is also Colonel Resambars Efraim Michaeli, political and military commentator, and also a former IDF attaché in Russia. Hello Efraim, how are you?
Hello Ruth, I'm fine. Hello to you and to the viewers. I'm fine, thank God.
Efraim, I want to take advantage of this unique opportunity where we're meeting like this on screen to clarify together with you and our viewers, what does Russia gain from the confrontation between the United States and China? Where do its interests lie? And can it really, under the cover of this confrontation, achieve those interests, both in terms of its internal stability and in terms of international conditions?
The world known as the Western world doesn't listen, doesn't hear, doesn't understand, creates problems, creates wars, creates crises, and the ones who have lost in all these crises so far are the West, namely the United States and Europe. Meanwhile, Russia, in its new alliance, which President Vladimir Putin established with the President of China and other countries, that's the BRICS Union, which was founded about 5 or 6 years ago. But what you're really saying is moving toward a new world order. Yes, but what you're saying, wait, the arrival of Xi to Moscow, the red carpet, that Xi himself came in person to sit next to President Putin and watch the Victory Day parade 80 years since the defeat of the Nazis, including the participation of the Chinese army. And in doing so, he shows all the Trump supporters, all the Europeans, the current situation. Russia, China, and these countries are demanding to take the wheel in managing the victory. Yes, that's right.
So I very much agree with your analysis. An international alignment is being reorganized here, and Russia is playing a significant role in this, when actually, according to what you're saying, its interest is to stick with China and together nurture that same axis of evil that Israel is very concerned about: China, Russia, Iran. Why are the Russians so eager to be friends with the Chinese and not with the Americans? After all, in the current circumstances, they could supposedly gain much more from the British and the Americans, couldn't they?
No, that's not correct. For road matters, the United States is sending negative signals. A new president came in, replacing the previous one, who is being controlled from behind the scenes like a puppet. And he's shaking up all the cards. Yuri says, on the other hand, look at the map. Russia is 9,000 kilometers wide as a country, and it's connected to China by about 5,000 kilometers of land border. The moment the West imposed sanctions since 2014 on Russia for supplying oil and gas, which is their lifeblood, their source of income, so the Russians redirected all the pipelines from Europe, rerouted them, dug new pipelines, and charted new routes for gas supply. To China, the rising industrial power, supposedly the manufacturer of the world, and there they sell them the gas and oil, and through China to other countries as well, including liquefying gas, turning it from gas to liquid. And via Chinese ships it is supplied, by the way, even to Europe at a price 3 times higher than it was before the 2014 war over Crimea and the 2022 war with Ukraine. That is to say, Russia was not isolated by the Western sanctions as people here thought. They created difficulties, but the more difficulties you impose, the more you provide ways to overcome them. Russia significantly strengthened its own domestic arms industry and eventually found a way to market its oil and gas through alternative marketing channels. And the evidence for this, beyond what the West reports, is that real estate prices in Moscow are rising, life there is thriving, and they have not collapsed. It's true that the ruble has indeed dropped significantly against the dollar. It's currently around 82 to 85 rubles per dollar, but this is still not the kind of economic catastrophe that many in the West had expected.
Basically, you're describing a country that relies heavily on a neighboring country, which, according to what you mentioned, shares about 60% of its border with Russia, and that neighbor is China. Where are the risks for the Russians in this very China-dependent policy they're pursuing?
Ruth, you have the same problem I do. And to all our viewers, we think Western. We're constantly being fed Western media, and Western is what's considered right. Look, Israel is judged for its actions in Gaza, and who is it? It's the Western media. Who is the West? A handful of European countries and the USA. That's what matters to us. How many are there, really? How many of them actually influence the world? All the European countries together, the European bloc, don't even reach 700 million people. In the United States, there are about 330 million people. Canada, Australia, New Zealand, add them in, and it's still no more than 1.2 billion people. That's not the whole world, Ruth. The world is China alone has 1.5 billion people. India has 1.5 billion people, 500 million more. And then there's Russia and all those other powers, the countries of Iran, the Central Asian countries. All of them are now united in a new alliance, a bloc centered around Russia and China.
I'm asking you, what risks is Russia actually taking upon itself in this alliance, in the very tight mutual dependence it maintains with China? Are there any, or is it just a paradise, a perfect world with no risks at all?
The risks could be, in my opinion, don't do to your friend what you wouldn't want done to you. What you did to Ukraine when you say that Russian speakers in Ukraine should be part of the Russian state or the Russian Federation could happen in the future. That in the Ural Mountains, in the Ural region, north of China, there is a large concentration of Chinese-Russian population. In their bordering regions, into Siberia, into eastern Russia, new cantons of Chinese speakers are being formed, along with intermarriage between Russians and Chinese. And one day China could tell Russia, listen, my friend, you have 9,000 kilometers of width and only 140 million inhabitants, and you can't even patrol your own border, so I need some of your land to expand and relieve the pressure. And something like that could happen. The problem is the nuclear deterrence between the two countries, but that's not the case right now.
We're talking about Russia's interests, but what's also interesting are Putin's interests and whether there's an overlap between Russia's interests and Putin's interests.
Good question. A very good question. We are aware in Western culture, the leader is constantly criticized and insulted. Take Netanyahu in Israel, for example. There are always protests against him. The world is sorry. As one of the most powerful and greatest leaders in the world, there is no longer any real leadership in the world. The world has stopped producing leaders. Tell me one leader in Europe who can truly be considered a leader. There isn't anyone, not a single one. And in the United States, which used to be led by strong figures, Biden, the Clinton group, Obama, they ran the country, the greatest superpower in the world, and the world remained silent. For 4 years, these guys ran the world, and the world stayed silent. Now, today, the world no longer produces leaders. Trump has a certain image, his impulsiveness, his constantly changing decisions, the news every morning, these don't give him the depth of true leadership. The world leaders who are standing up are Netanyahu, Redeemer Putin, Xi, the president of China, and people like that. And Putin is very popular with his people. He's a leader who gives to his people. If you look inside what is broadcast in the West, that a people hates their leader, their regime, is nonsense. That's not true. The people love their leader, the national leader who protects the nation, the Russian language and Russian culture, and empowers it. Is it a complete overlap? He was even convinced by his wife 10 years ago. 10 years ago, he said, I can't be married to a woman right now. I'm married to Russia. I need to be free, and I care for the Russian people, the Russian nation, the Russian culture, and that's why he is loved. And look, in the West, you don't have to accept that. In the West, what do they have? If there's a beloved leader, and according to the Iron Curtain narrative, he's a dictator. But a leader can't be beloved. A beloved leader can only exist with us. Show me who is a beloved leader. Macron, his family, people who are scattered across Europe, constantly breaking away from themselves. Leaders rise and fall every day. Canada's Prime Minister, the President of the United States, who is a leader in the world? A tie, a date, someone to lock him in. And that's why Putin is here, setting up a forum together with China and with 5 countries he has brought in. Brazil, Iran, South Africa, a political and economic alliance, BRICS. They want to shape the world and maybe even replace the dominant currency in the future. Look, Anglo-Saxons who migrated from Europe created the United States, and then the entire system we know, they control through a banking system.
The same process we saw with the decline of Europe and the rise of the United States. Do you think now we're going to see the decline of the United States of America and the rise of the China Axis and its partners?
Tell me, how do there's a fight in the neighborhood. I want to be protected. Who am I going to go to? To someone who knows how to protect me, or to someone who doesn't know how to protect me?
What is the best case scenario from Russia's perspective? What are Putin's rosiest dreams, the ones he hopes will come true not only on the international stage, but especially in the context of the Middle East?
That's a good one, to sit in the new Security Council, which includes other countries, not just based on the victory over the Nazis 80 years ago. After all, the ones running the world today are an alliance of 5 countries, or rather a struggle between 5 countries: France, England, the United States, China, and Russia, as was agreed in May 1945. In 1945. And it can't go on like this. Now there's a new world order. Russia wants to return to the status of the Soviet Union as a superpower. They have managed to regain, both economically and militarily, the status of the Soviet Union, which collapsed in 1991, and now it wants to bring its allies along as well. Or don't bring your friends to control one arena, and I'll control the other arena with my friends.
Who would he want to put on the Security Council?
Brazil, Iran, India, for example.
What are the implications for the Middle East? How does Putin's war end when it serves this vision of his and the Chinese?
Look, what happened under the previous administration of the United States, when they appointed the U.S. Secretary of State on that same day, Monday, he arrived at night to meet with Netanyahu, and on Tuesday, Netanyahu, about 7 years ago, flew to Putin. Meaning between Trump, who was in power then, and Putin, the bridge was Netanyahu. And President Trump also confirmed since his recent election that the only person, the only foreign leader he can trust and work with is Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu and the Biden administration fell into a trap. What? The moment Biden came here and told us, don't, and we were in total shock, our deterrence was essentially destroyed, and he restored our deterrence. They told Netanyahu, don't play both sides between the West and the East on our backs. Choose. And Netanyahu was ultimately swallowed up by Biden into the Western Bloc. It was convenient for us that we were also coordinating with Russia in Syria. The general staffs were coordinating the war between them. Except for one incident, there was nothing since 2015 when Russia entered Syria, and neither rebels nor ISIS nor anyone else would reach our northern border in Syria because Russia made sure, since they were with us, that they wouldn't reach our border. And it worked. This required a convergence of interests. Right now, that convergence of interests has been broken to our detriment. We are now completely, absolutely, and ultimately dependent on the Holy One, blessed be He. I assume that you and I pray to the same God, and I put on tefillin for the same God. So in the end, we are dependent on the United States. That's why we need to disrupt the thinking, and the only one who can do that, again, I say, is Benjamin Netanyahu. The leaders we have are third or fourth rate compared to world leadership. For leadership in the world, none of them are respected in the eyes of the world because they are not capable of being leaders on a global level. But the question is, we won't have Netanyahu forever, right? What will happen after Netanyahu? We're not cultivating a new generation of leaders here. The media destroys anyone who rises up. If someone rises, immediately they either cut in line or, sir, it's missed, you did this, he did that, he took money, they go after him. What needs to be done is to maintain the axis, to maintain the influential axis, Russia-China, and not to cut ties with them. We still have good relations with them.
But what does that mean on a concrete level? What does that mean? You're basically saying that Israel has been completely swallowed up by the sphere of American influence and has supposedly disconnected itself from the Sino-Russian axis.
Who else besides Saviv Vitkov can... I'm asking you a question, think about it. Who else besides Saviv Vitkov can mediate in the conflict between Ukraine and Russia? On a global level? Only he is accepted by everyone, yes, but you need to take advantage of these levers, not be dependent. Besides that, Ruth, I always like to draw an analogy, it seems to me, like when there's a criminal in the neighborhood. I live in Ashdod. There's a criminal here who intimidates everyone. Someone comes and says to me, bro, you have a store and we might, harm you or something like that. Someone comes and says to me, I can take care of things with that criminal so he won't mess with you. The only one who communicates with the criminal in the Middle East, which is Iran, and who has global influence, is Russia, and after that, China. One more thing, the future agreement between Russia and Ukraine, it's possible that the US will ask Russia to bring along its supporters in its own backyard, including Iran, and to influence Iran to back off from developing nuclear weapons and to stop its armament, maybe even to bring it back into the Commonwealth of Independent States.
But what does that mean in terms of US/Russian policy in Gaza? What would they want to see there? Does the United States actually want to have control over the territory so it can have some kind of military base in the Middle East? Would Russia prefer to see an Arab government there? Would the United States want to sell Gaza, in quotes, with an Arab government to Russia as some kind of peace offering? Where do you think they're heading with this?
In my opinion, the US is very far from President Trump's declarations about a new and flourishing Gaza. As a political commentator, I don't want to use harsh words, but that declaration was unrealistic. Now, for Russia, with all its statements in the Middle East and around the world, this is just a minor detail. As long as its supporters want something there, Russia will go in their direction. That is to say, Russia hasn't created any opportunities, statements, or influences. And in this war, Israel against Gaza, it did take part in the release of Russian speakers or some people who came to Moscow to meet with the Russian authorities as if to influence the release of their children or relatives to Russia. But let's not forget, almost all of the weapons being fired from Gaza at Israel, except for some that are locally made, are of Russian origin.
Saying that they're helping Hamas fight us, but they don't have any specific strategy in which they want influence or a foothold in Gaza, whereas apparently the Americans do.
They think that the Americans got stuck in the quagmire of Gaza, and that's why they're warning them not to get in too deep. Aside from making international political statements, as a superpower, they have to declare these things. They don't believe that the US is capable of solving this Islamic problem. They know how fundamentalist Islam thinks. They fought in Afghanistan and were defeated, and they saw the US, Iraq and Syria, in every place, that it's impossible to defeat fundamentalist Islam, but it is possible to communicate with them in other ways. I want to wish the people of Israel that it will cherish its sons and that all its sons will return. We still have a vision ahead of us, and in this way, everything will be all right in the state of Israel. Let us just be united and love one another.